Okay, so you know that feeling when you're like finally settling in for the night, about to binge watch your favorite show, and bam, the phone rings. It's like this voice, dripping with authority, claiming you owe some ancient debt that you have absolutely zero memory of. They're threatening lawsuits, garnished wages, maybe even jail time. My blood pressure's spiking just thinking about it. But don't worry, today's deep dive, it's like debt collection scams 101. We're going to arm you with all the knowledge you need to spot these shady operators
Yeah.
and fight back.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. These scams, they're terrifyingly common. What's particularly sneaky is how they exploit our anxieties around debt. And trust me, these scammers, they're getting sophisticated. They'll try to make themselves look super official, which makes it even harder to know who to trust.
So let's start with the basics. What exactly are fraudulent debt collection agencies?
Imagine a company that exists solely to scare people into paying debts that might not even exist, or debts that have already been settled. That's essentially what we're dealing with. They might hit you up through phone calls, emails, even text messages. And they'll often resort to aggressive tactics and threats to get what they want.
Yikes, that's seriously messed up. So what are some of the telltale signs that someone's trying to pull a fast one? Like what screams scam louder than a heavy metal concert?
Well, one of the biggest giveaways is their language. If someone's threatening you with arrest or legal action right off the bat, without even giving you a chance to dispute the debt, or providing proper documentation, that's a huge red flag. Remember, legitimate debt collectors, they have to follow the laws, specifically something called the Fair Debt Collection Practices Act, or FDCPA for short. It's basically a shield against those bully tactics.
Okay, the FDCPA. That sounds important, but also kind of legally and jargony. Can we break that down a bit?
Think of the FDCPA like your personal do not call list. But for debt collectors, it gives you the power to control how they communicate with you. Did you know you can actually force them to only contact you in writing? That's right. You can shut down those harassing phone calls completely.
Whoa, that's awesome. Seriously, why haven't I heard about this before?
It's one of the most powerful, yet often overlooked aspects of the FDCPA. It also protects you from a ton of other shady tactics, like demanding immediate payment, without providing any written proof that you actually owe something.
So basically, if someone's on the phone demanding money right now through a wire transfer or gift cards, it's pretty much guaranteed to be a scam.
You got it. Legitimate debt collectors have to provide a written notice, detailing everything about the debt, outlining your rights, and giving you a chance to validate or dispute it. It's all about transparency and giving you the space to respond.
Okay, so far we've got threatening language.
Yeah.
And demanding immediate payment without proof as our scam alarm bells. What else should people be wary of?
Another trick these scammers use is name dropping. They'll often use names that sound super official, like the Department of Legal Affairs, or even scarier, the IRS.
Oh my gosh, the IRS. Okay, that would freak me out.
Right. They do this to tap into that fear of authority, hoping you'll just blindly pay up without questioning anything. But remember, the real IRS, they would never contact you like that. They communicate through official mail, not frantic phone calls.
So it's all about taking a deep breath and not panicking, no matter how official they sound.
Exactly. And remember those real-life examples we talked about earlier, like that terrifying debt settlement scam, where they promise to erase your debt for a fee, then vanish with your money.
Ugh, that just makes my blood boil. These scammers are preying on people who are already stressed about money, which is just cruel.
It is. It's important to remember that these scammers are experts at manipulation. They're playing a psychological game, exploiting people's anxieties and vulnerabilities. That's why knowledge is our best defense. The more we know, the less likely we are to fall for these tricks.
Okay, so we're armed with some serious scam spotting skills now. But let's say the worst happens, and someone does find themselves on the receiving end of one of these calls. What should they do?
First things first. Don't give them any personal information over the phone, and absolutely no payments until you have written proof of the debt.
Right, so it's all about getting that documentation. But how do you even know if the debt collector is legit in the first place? I mean, anyone can print a fancy letterhead.
That's where some detective work comes in. You can check if they're registered with the right authorities. In the U.S., there's the CFPB, which stands for the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. Think of them like the Financial Fairness Police. You can also check with the Better Business Bureau, the BBB, to see if there are any complaints against the agency.
So it's about taking that extra step to verify and not just take their word for it.
Absolutely. Another thing you can do is look up their contact info independently, like on their website or through online business directories, to make sure everything matches up.
Okay, so we're verifying their identity like it's a first date. But what about my rights in all of this? Do I even have any?
You absolutely do. Remember the FDCPA we talked about? Well, it outlines a bunch of important rights that protect you from abusive debt collection practices.
Okay, let's dive into those rights because honestly, I need to know what I'm armed with here. What are the key things the FDCPA guarantees?
It's a pretty awesome list. You have the right to dispute the debt and demand proof. You're protected from harassment and abusive language. You can even tell them to stop calling you altogether. And communicate only in writing. Plus, you have the right to know the name of the original creditor and the exact amount of debt.
So even if the debt is real, I don't have to put up with any shady behavior.
Exactly. You're not powerless in this situation. And if a debt collector tries to pull any funny business, you can report them to the Federal Trade Commission, the FTC, or the CFPB. They're there to protect you.
Okay, so now I'm starting to feel a bit more confident. But what if I'm pretty sure the debt isn't even real? Or maybe I already paid it ages ago.
That's a smart question. In those cases, it's best to go straight to the source. The original creditor. You can contact them directly to verify if the debt actually exists. You'd be surprised how often scammers try to collect on debts that have already been settled, sold to another agency, or were never real in the first place.
Whoa, that's wild. So contacting the original creditor is like double-checking the facts
Yeah.
and cutting out the middleman, which in this case could be the scammer.
You nailed it. And even if the debt is real, going straight to the original creditor can be helpful. You can discuss repayment options with them directly, maybe even work out a payment plan. That way you bypass the debt collector entirely.
Okay, so we've covered a ton of ground here. Identifying red flags,
Yeah.
verifying debt collectors, and knowing our rights. But what about staying ahead of the game? How do we avoid getting into these scary situations in the first place?
That's a great segue into our next topic, because staying vigilant is crucial. It's all about being proactive and protecting yourself.
Okay, now we're talking. Let's dive into that. What are some steps listeners can take to be proactive about protecting themselves?
One of the most important things is to regularly check your credit reports. Think of it like a financial health checkup. It's not the most exciting task, I know, but it can save you a world of trouble down the line.
Okay, credit reports, I know they're important.
Yeah.
But honestly, they kind of make my eyes glaze over. What exactly should I be looking for?
You're looking for any errors or suspicious activity, things like accounts you don't recognize, incorrect balances, or even inquiries from companies you've never contacted. Those are all red flags that something fishy might be going on.
So if I see something weird, what should I do?
Don't panic. First, make sure you're looking at the correct information. Sometimes a simple mistake like a transposed number can cause a discrepancy. If you're certain there's an error, you can dispute it directly with the credit bureau. They're legally obligated to investigate and correct any inaccuracies.
That's good to know. Where can people even get their credit reports?
You can actually get free copies of your credit reports from each of the 3 major credit bureaus: Equifax, Experian, and TransUnion. Once a year, through a website called annualcreditreport.com. It's a fantastic resource, and it's completely free.
Free is always good. Okay, so we're checking our credit reports regularly, like good little financial citizens. What else can we do to stay ahead of these scammers?
It's all about staying informed. Those websites we mentioned earlier, the FTC and the CFPB, they have a wealth of information on common scams and how to protect yourself. It's like a scam-busting library right at your fingertips.
So it's like keeping our scamdar tuned up and ready to go.
Exactly. And don't be afraid to share that knowledge with your friends and family. You never know who might be vulnerable to these tactics. It's like creating a scam-proof bubble around your loved ones.
I love that. A scam-proof bubble. Okay, so we've talked about recognizing those red flags, verifying information, understanding our rights, and staying informed. But you know what I think often gets overlooked in all of this? The emotional toll these scams can take. It's not just about the money, right?
You are so right to bring that up. It's heartbreaking how these scammers manipulate people, preying on their fears and vulnerabilities. Imagine the shame and helplessness someone might feel after falling victim to one of these scams.
It's just awful. They're already stressed about money, and then to have someone take advantage of that is just cruel.
It is, and sadly, that shame often prevents people from coming forward, from seeking help or reporting the crime.
That just makes the whole situation even worse. It's so important to create an environment where people feel safe to talk about their experiences without feeling judged.
I couldn't agree more. We need to foster open communication and support within our families and communities. If someone you know has been targeted, listen with compassion and empathy. Don't blame or shame them. Remember, anyone can fall victim to these scams, even people who are generally savvy with their finances.
That's a really important reminder. These scammers are incredibly sophisticated, and their tactics are constantly evolving.
Exactly. That's why it's so crucial to stay informed and to be cautious. Don't rely solely on your gut feeling. If something seems off, take the time to verify, research, and if necessary, seek professional guidance.
And even if we're not directly targeted, we can still play a role in protecting others, right?
Absolutely. If you come across any suspicious activity, report it to the authorities. Sharing information about scams, especially with those who might be more vulnerable, like seniors or those who might not be as familiar with technology, can make a huge difference. It's a collective effort, and every little bit helps.
I love that. It's about looking out for each other and building a stronger, more informed community. So we've covered a lot of ground here. Red flags, verification,
Right.
staying informed, and even the emotional impact of these scams. It's like a complete toolkit for navigating the world of debt collection.
It is. And remember, knowledge is power. The more we know about these scams, the better equipped we are to fight back.
Okay, all this talk about fighting back has me thinking. We've talked about how these scams exploit our individual vulnerabilities. But what about the bigger picture? What can we do collectively as a society to raise awareness and create a more protective environment?
That's a fantastic question, and one that I think deserves more attention. It's not just about individual responsibility, it's about systemic change.
I'm all ears. Where do we even begin?
Well, I think one crucial area is financial literacy education. If we can equip people with the knowledge and skills to manage their finances responsibly, understand their rights, and recognize potential scams, we're already a step ahead.
That makes a lot of sense. Knowledge really is power, especially when it comes to finances.
It absolutely is. And it's not just about individual education. We need to advocate for stronger consumer protection laws and regulations. Lawmakers need to hold these fraudulent agencies accountable and create stricter penalties for their actions.
Right, about creating a legal landscape where these scams aren't so easy to pull off.
Exactly. And another crucial aspect is access to legal aid and support services. For victims of these scams, many people don't know where to turn for help, or they simply can't afford legal representation. We need to make those resources more readily available.
That's so important. It's about making sure everyone has the support they need to navigate these situations and seek justice. But I'm curious, what about the role of technology in all of this? It seems like it's a double-edged sword. On the one hand, technology makes it easier for these scammers to operate. But on the other hand, it can also be used to fight back.
That's a brilliant observation. You're absolutely right. Technology has definitely made it easier for scammers to reach a wider audience, to spoof phone numbers, create fake websites, and send mass phishing emails. But it can also be harnessed for good. We can use data analytics to track scam patterns, develop early warning systems, and educate consumers about the latest threats.
So it's like a digital arms race, constantly trying to stay one step ahead of the scammers.
In a way, yes. And social media can be a powerful tool for raising awareness and sharing information about scams. We can use these platforms to connect with each other, share our experiences, and spread the word about the latest tactics.
I love that. It's like creating a collective defense system, a network of informed individuals looking out for each other.
Exactly. It's about collective empowerment and resilience. And it's also about holding businesses accountable for protecting our data and taking proactive steps to prevent scams on their platforms.
Yes.
Yeah.
We need to demand more transparency and responsibility from the companies we interact with online. This is a complex issue with so many different layers, but I'm feeling hopeful. It's clear that there are things we can do, both individually and collectively, to make a difference.
I agree. This conversation has been incredibly insightful. We've explored the depths of these debt collection scams, from the specific tactics to the broader psychological vulnerabilities they exploit, and even ventured into the realm of potential solutions.
I know, it's been quite the deep dive.
It has. But I believe that by shedding light on these scams, by understanding their tactics, and by working together, we can create a safer and more informed environment for ourselves and our communities.
Okay, before we wrap things up, I have one final thought-provoking question for our listeners to ponder.
I am intrigued. Let's hear it.
We've talked about how these scams exploit individual vulnerabilities and the importance of collective action. But what concrete steps can we take to turn that awareness into tangible change? What can communities, organizations, and policymakers do to really move the needle on this issue?
That's a fantastic question, and one that I think deserves a deep dive of its own. It speaks to a broader conversation about consumer protection, financial literacy, and the role of technology in both enabling and combating these scams. It's a complex issue with no easy answers, but it's a conversation we absolutely need to be having.
I couldn't agree more. It's not just about being informed. It's about taking action. It's about using our voices to advocate for change, to demand better protections, and to create a more just and equitable financial system for everyone.
Beautifully said. Let's continue this conversation, raise awareness, and work together to create a safer and more informed world.
And on that note, we'll wrap up this deep dive